everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. This is one of the many content pieces that we are putting together in the weeks and months ahead as we help the lead generation and performance marketing industry navigate the most recent FCC one-to-one consent updates to the TCPA, otherwise known as the Telephone Communication Consumer Protection Act. We believe that this content that we put together will help you decode these changes with confidence and a focus on compliance. So the topic for today's webinar is Shaping CRM Success, the key to compliance and growth. So to kick things off here, we're just going to start off with some general housekeeping items. In our webinar platform, there is a chat icon and a questions icon. We do encourage you to ask questions, and we do have somebody monitoring them throughout the presentation. Please use the chat section for general comments and interactions with our other participants, and please use the questions sections if there's any questions you would like to pose to us on the panel. We will leave time at the end of the webinar to respond to questions, but we will also do our best to keep an eye on the questions that are there and provide responses throughout. At the end of our webinar, we do have a brief 2-minute survey that will pop up on your screen once we end this webinar, and we do encourage you to fill those out. We do read them, and they do actually help us to plan for further content that we believe you will find useful. Last but not least, the recording of this webinar will be emailed out tomorrow morning for you all to share. So before we get into the introductions, I would like to pull up a quick slide and talk about some key dates that I believe you should all be aware of. So the first one here, you will see that the FCC has a AI-generated voice and calling requires prior express written consent. This is actually already live. It was live February 2nd, and it's something that you need to be aware of. Number two, there was an update to the telemarketing sales rule. That went live October 15th. That pertains to the storage and recording of call details. Number three, the reason why we're all here, the FCC one-to-one consent update is on January 27th. That's in approximately 96 days. So it's time to start planning and updating your systems now. And then last but not least, we actually have a new update here. This is going to be going live on April 11th, 2025. And this is the Universal Consent Revocation Update. And basically what this is at a very, very high level is that if a consumer opts out through one channel, then they actually are allowed to opt out through all the channels at the same time. This is going to have a major impact on contact strategies and CRM technologies, and it's something that you should be aware of. We're not going to be addressing that in this particular webinar, but I do encourage you to look at this update that's coming in April of 2025. So let me give you a little bit of background about myself. So my name is Michael Peronto. I'm the Director of Financial Services here at Active Prospect. I've been in the CRM, contact center, and lead marketing space for over 13 years. I've previously worked for CRM companies, including Velocify and Shape Software. I've done large implementations of contact center softwares, including Five9 and Nice and Contact. And I previously worked for companies like Fairway Independent Mortgage Corporation, Cardinal Financial Company Limited Partnership, where I was the Director of Lead Marketing. So now that I'm done, let me just move it over here to Scott. So Scott, what I would like you to do is provide an introduction about yourself. And while you're at it, I really think you should tell us why you are so passionate about lead management and CRM. I believe you have an incredible story, and I think it's important for our audience to hear.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. And obviously, we've been talking about doing this for a long time now. And with these important dates coming up, this is very relevant topic and all of that. So glad to finally be with you on the show. For those that don't know, Mike and I go way back, and that kind of leads into my history. I spent the first 10 years of my career at a company was Syntex Home Equity, became NationStar Mortgage, now it's called Mr. Cooper. And I started my career there as just a new hire loan officer. I'd worked my way up into a management role, and then I worked my way into a role that was a sales marketing role, where I was the liaison between sales and marketing. That was my official title. But really what I was the marriage counselor between sales and marketing is really what I was. I would go to meetings and essentially was a mediator between the two parties. And through that, I was in charge of all lead distribution and lead analytics. And as part of that, I needed a system. I needed a lead management system. And through that, I found a lead management system third party called Velocify. And through that journey, that's where I met Mike. Late one night, I was having trouble with something working. I had a huge program initiative starting the next morning. It was a massive program. We had just onboarded, probably 1 million customers. And it was so massive. And I came across a guy named Mike Peronto He answered the phone at like 7 o'clock my time, and he stayed on the phone with me until 3 o'clock in the morning my time until we figured it out. And it was then and there I knew that it was a match made in heaven. Fast forward a couple of years, I started working for Velocify, and so did Mike. And then fast forward a couple, probably a year or two after that, me and Mike were attached to the hip as we traveled around the country supporting our enterprise clients. He was the enterprise support person, and I was the enterprise account manager. And so Mike and I started to work very closely from that aspect. Fast forward a couple more years, I started a company called STP Solutions, and convinced Mike to join my team there. And we went out and did CRM implementations and assessments and all of that fun stuff. And then, Shape acquired STP Solutions, and Mike came along with that journey. And then, Mike had this great opportunity with Active Prospect and fully supported that. And so now we're connected again. So super excited to tell that story, but also incorporating Mike, you back into that story as well. As you talk about my passion for lead management, I was, early on in starting a lead management consulting business in 2019. Someone, it was actually Alec Hansen, who's the CMO at Loan Depot, had done a post on LinkedIn that said, essentially that lead management is boring. Just let's face it, it's boring. No one gets excited about lead management. And so, of course, I comment back, and before you know it, I was on his podcast and we were talking about why it's not boring. In my opinion, right? And so I had to, challenge that. But really, at the end of the day, for me, what I found is that you have to find things about lead management that drive your passion for it. And and really, it comes down to me is understanding, like, why do you do what you do, right? And if you're in mortgage or if you're in insurance or at the end of the day, what is your mission? And if you're mortgaged, it's to provide families homes. If it's in insurance, it's to protect their future, and so understanding what that is and then using lead management and the passion behind that to get there. My story just happens to be that when I was 9 years old, my father made the unfortunate choice to commit suicide. And fast forward all these years later, after I'd started STP Solutions, 30 years after his death, went up to Illinois to clean out a storage unit. And in the storage unit, I found a box of letters. And the letters actually were letters to mortgage companies. There were letters of explanations to essentially underwriters that were explaining his entire situation. And what was behind it was simply just a denial letter. Just, you are denied, or sorry, we can't help you. There was no plan of action. There was no hey, we're sorry we can't help you now, but here's some steps forward, and here's how you can improve your credit. Here's how you could. There was nothing like that. And it was then and there that I realized that maybe this is why I'm here on earth. Maybe this is why I'm so passionate about it. Just didn't really know it at the time. And so, my passion from that day forward has been, how can I help every company make sure they're getting everything out of every lead, because every lead matters. Every customer has a story of some kind. My dad's story, as I read the letters, was that he wanted to provide a backyard for his kids, to have a sandbox, to have, he had 3 boys. He wanted us to have a swing set and a basketball goal and all of that stuff. That was his dream and his passion. And I'm not saying that's why he went and made the choice that he did, but I know it was probably a contributing factor into that he could not provide that for us. And at the end of the day, he talked to a mortgage loan officer and they just said, sorry, you're denied. And they moved on to the next customer. Right. And did they status the lead correctly so they can get the right nurture strategies in place, all of those things. So when you see my passion in these videos, how do we make lead management not boring? It is to find the passion that drives that. And that's why I'm here.
Scott, first of all, I teared up a little bit even when I heard your story. So, I appreciate you telling that. I think it's incredible context for our audience to hear and understand it. I think it's helpful for our audience. We always like to, at Active Prospect, have our panelists talk about the companies that they work for and, what verticals that you currently service and what products that you currently offer. Could you briefly talk about what Shape is, what verticals you service, so that our audience is aware?
Yeah, for sure. You heard me say lead management a lot, lead management, and that had been my history. I'd always desired to have a CRM that we'd supported as well, because lead management is that front end part, and then it becomes a CRM for the nurture and stuff. And you can figure out how to do a lead management system, and do some CRM components, but it's not perfect. And so in our journey of STP Solutions, which was a consulting firm really for lead management companies, there are companies that needed lead management administration and help them, those types of things. We came across a company called Shape, and Shape had both lead management and CRM and phone system, and it had all the tools, and it worked in multiple verticals: mortgage, insurance, solar, debt, you name it, like anything.
Yep.
And so through that journey, I tell the story. I tell that story to tell kind of what does Shape do? What does Shape do? Or what does Shape do? It does everything. It literally does everything from any type of business to from the start of the lead to generating the lead, getting the lead on the website, our lead engine product, all the way through closing. Like, you can have literally your entire business in one system. And so, when it comes to driving the leads in, to running them through the compliance checks, whether, using a lead conduit to drive the lead in and doing all of that, like, there's so much flexibility with the system. In fact, and Mike, I think we both saw this early on. It was like, wait a second, how do we demo this in like one meeting?
Yeah.
Right. It was like,
right.
Like, how do we focus all of the system in one thing? There's so many tools available. And so, I would say that, and I think we're going to talk more about it, but, the other big part with Shape is that we are constantly on the edge of new technology. Like, we are always right on the edge of creating new things, in leveraging the new technology. So, for example, we just released our AI Insights product that is revolutionizing the ability to not just transcribe calls. I mean, that's been around, but to really do actionable things now with that call transcription that's happening in the system, to help people do more with less time, right? And at the end of the day, that's kind of our goal. It's always been our goal, Mike, is like, how can we allow salespeople, sales managers, to do more with the amount of time they have, right? Whether it be a prioritization view, whether it be a report that they can run to manage things, and those types of things. So I don't know if I answered your question perfectly, but
well, I think that was, when you talk about Shape, there's so many. I know that there's many verticals that you service, and there's many tools and technologies that you have. And we're going to dive into some of the AI components here in just a minute, which I think is very helpful because there's compliance aspects of it. And I think it's also leads to a broader discussion. Before we get into that, we've got a real quick poll for our audience. The poll that we currently have, you're going to see, do you currently use a middleware program to ingest records from lead providers or your own landing pages before they get posted into your CRM platform? You can answer the poll off to the right, yes, no, or unsure. We'll revisit these answers later on, and it does pertain to our discussion. So, Scott, you and I, man, we've been in lead management work for a long time, especially in the mortgage industry. And as you know, this industry is extremely regulated. It has a heavy emphasis on compliance. The compliance team can be, 3 to 7 people, depending on the size of the company. Sometimes they hire a full, third-party counsel, et cetera. And one thing I'd like to focus on is, we talk a lot about here at Active Prospect about what you should be doing, when you are ingesting a record initially. But now, once it hits a CRM, there's a lot of things from a compliance aspect that you can do. And I know that Shape has been really, really working and innovating to develop new products around compliance. Can you talk a little bit more about what compliance aspects you have built into the Shape and what you are using AI to do to help that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we have integrated and partnered with some of the, the companies that specialize in this. So DNC.com is an example, to run against the national and state and DNC. And I think a lot of people may not even know this, that like there are literal like county level or, rules, right, that they may not know about, may not be, applying to their current rules today. Where in one county you can do this, and it is very specific in certain areas of what time you can call, what, all of the stuff. and holidays that are acceptable or not. There's all kinds of stuff. And so our integrations with our partners like DNC take care of all of that, where phone numbers are ran through that. When you add something in DNC to essentially make it to where you can't even call it through the system. Like that's essentially what we're doing, making it to where we're taking that risk away, where you cannot make a phone call on the system, you cannot text, you cannot put your company in jeopardy of essentially falling out of compliance with that.
Yep.
From an AI standpoint, I think what we have found is that, or what I've found just as a sales manager in the past, is that we get all the way to, let's say, closing. Someone in mortgage is going to relate to this, right? Where we get all the way to closing and we find out that someone along the way said something that was out of compliance. And it may be before closing.
Yep.
Maybe it's after closing. Maybe it's a year later. Maybe it's, when we go to fund the loan.
Yep.
Or we have to repurchase the loan. Like there's so many places where we could find that out later on, and it could really, really hurt the company or the broker shop, like whoever it is. It could really do some damage. And so, one of the aspects that we're trying to cover for is how do we catch that stuff up front? Yeah. And what you'll see on the screen here is our new AI insights. And so, not only from like a coaching, like the coaching side is a whole different discussion. It's so powerful how we can help coach and provide feedback, and the ability to give managers that feedback and let users self-coach. But just from a compliance standpoint, that we're able to say, like, here are the rules, like set in stone. Like these are the things you cannot say. These are the things that that are out of compliance. And if those things are said or discussed on the phone call, to immediately flag those. Now, some systems have transcripts, right? And so now you're requiring someone to go in and listen and just try to find it, right? We have the ability to actually hey, we think there might be an issue here, so let's flag it. And not only do we flag it, we have the ability to trigger something to happen. So what do we want to happen? Well, some companies have decided we want to change the status. One of the great things about Shave is we get multiple statuses for every lead. It could be in a contacting attempt status. It could be, let's say one lead is in the contacted status because we've talked to them. It's in the LOS status as application or pre-qualification, but it's in a compliance status because the LOA got on the phone and started talking about interest rates. They're not licensed. So the compliance flag became, hey, there's a compliance issue that we need to look into. And that happened during the pre-qual process. Imagine that getting to later on down the road and that getting blown up later on down the road, but we're able to jump in front of it and figure out what do we do next. That is what we provide with our solution, to where we can flag it, change the status, send an email to this person. And imagine someone that's in QA or compliance, or someone that's trying to do this today within a company. They can have a report. These are the ones that are flagged. These are the ones to go listen to. These are the ones I need to investigate further. All of that stuff simplified. And, I just think of myself as like an executive at a mortgage company, how, we used to have at Mr. Cooper, we'd have auditors come in. And I just saw the executives, the concern on their faces of oh crap, what's going to happen? What are they going to find? Like, we were all good, always were, but it was still that I'm worried just in case, because I don't know what they're saying on the phones. And so it gives them that peace of mind to be able to, I always talk about sleep better at night, like lay your head in the pillow and not worry about these things. Our solution is going to do that for a lot of people within an organization.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. I remember when you first showed me this solution, and, I really think when you think about AI and its usage within, CRM or contact center softwares, we're really just kind of scratching the surface. If you think about it, I mean, you see many, many different companies that are out there. They're innovating using many different AI tools. I personally think AI has a huge application for compliance. Being able to review everything that's happening, every single text message that's sent, every single email that's sent, every phone call, transcribe it, score it, send out notifications. I mean, there are so many compliance applications that can be used. And I think also we're going to start seeing more of a evolution where it goes from not just like compliance aspects, but also certain sales aspects within a CRM. So while a sales agent is on a call, the AI is listening to that call and maybe providing them some things, some additional details that they could talk to that customer about, or taking the transcription, summarizing it, putting it into the notes. Or maybe it listens into the call. Maybe it says like, hey, you know what? I heard on the call you mentioned I'll schedule an appointment with you tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Well, maybe the AI tool can serve up and say like, hey, do you want to send out this appointment reminder to that customer? Like there's so many things that AI can be used for. And I know, I think throughout the last year, you've heard, our audience has heard about AI all the time, but now we're really starting to see a lot of the programming and effort and funding being applied into the CRM and contact center space.
And I'll tell you, it's moving so fast, Mike. Like,
oh yeah,
I did a post the other day where it's like, if you look at the evolution of sales over the last 100 years, it was like a filing cabinet to Rolodex to like, this is over 100-year span. Literally, AI is changing every week. And when I say that, I mean it, because literally, like a week after I did this, started to build this, we had new stuff already built. We already have built the ability to start updating fields as the conversation is happening. First name, update. Last name, update. Address, update the field in shape. I just haven't had time. Like, it's happening so fast. I haven't updated this slide yet.
Yeah.
Right? So to your point, it's going to happen faster than we think. And, I was even thinking through the compliance thing. We do sentiment as well. So think of a neutral or negative, let's say negative sentiment. Yep. So, someone's angry and there's a compliance issue. Those two things together now can have a different escalation path.
Right.
Versus positive and compliance. Then maybe like, just think of the possibilities with urgency and this, and it just,
yep.
Now I'm not going to sleep at night because I'm thinking of all these ideas, right?
Well, and I think part of it too is the efficiency gains that you get using AI, not just for like, I use it sometimes with my career. I use it for things that, I do, project planning, whatever that may be. But, when you're using it in a CRM or a contact center, a lot of the stuff that they're using AI for now was a very manual process. I remember having people at Cardinal Financial, we had to have managers take the time, pull calls out of reports, listen to the call. And, each call can be 20 minutes, an hour, depending on how the loan officer talks. And then from there, you're really taking that manager's perspective on if it was compliant or not. Yep. Right. And they would score it, whatever may be. This is a huge time savings. And so for companies that, if you've got a call center or using a CRM platform tool, leverage AI everywhere that you possibly can. It's going to save you guys a lot of time and make you more compliant.
And I think, sorry to keep going on this, but I think we'll get to this more. We're going to see more of these, call it retail, shops out there that aren't using a consolidated CRM today, but they're going to be forced to. Let's just face it. You're going to be forced to, end of the day, because of these changes. You're going to have big companies getting sued left and right for some of these changes, and you're going to be forced to. And so if that's the case, now think about the compliance standpoint when you have a distributed retail model using a system like this, and that at a corporate level, the compliance standpoint that helps there. But the benefit, though, that's the thing. We're talking about compliance. It sounds scary. Oh, they're going to listen to my calls, but there's so much benefit. Yeah, adding the notes and changing the status and triggering things and all of the stuff. The coaching is just a whole nother huge benefit. We're going to see a lot of changes soon with this.
So real quick, we're going to go back and revisit the poll results. So based on the poll, we asked if you currently are using a middleware to ingest records from lead providers or your own landing pages before they go into your CRM. We actually had 54% say yes, 17% say no, and 29% say unsure. And that may be that they weren't necessarily clear about what a middleware solution is. Scott, so I know that you, in your previous work experience, you had used a middleware solution. I think it'd be helpful for our audience for you to talk about what what were the different applications that you use with a middleware solution that sat in between where you would get your leads from or your calls from and your CRM and contact center platform?
Yeah, great question. There's different types of middleware, right? I have used it for inbound calls as one example, and that's a little different. We're talking here, but there's, consider it a middleware for when an inbound call comes in, we need to do something with the call, such as look up, where does it need to route to, which phone systems handle that most of the time. However, when you're talking about a customer retention shop, like at Mr. Cooper, where I was at for years, with millions of customers, not only do we need to check, like, where does it need to route to, we need to check, is there an existing application? We need to append data to it, et cetera.
Yeah.
So that started at the phone level, but then moving to now we have an inbound lead coming in, whether it be from our website or from they responded to a direct mail piece or we purchased a lead from somewhere. We needed to check things before it became a lead, before it came into the system. Right. And not only that, we needed to append data to it. We didn't have to, but it was in our benefit to append data to it that was going to be useful to us. From either a routing decision or from a just giving the salesperson as much information as possible, which ultimately gives it's a great customer experience. They're going to say, "Yep, why do you not have this information? You're servicing my loan," right? And so that middleware becomes really important. It could be DNC checks. It could be, I know that Lead Conduit, I've worked with many, many customers over the years that does a great job with all the different tools you guys have to check against this, and you can choose the different ones you want. So if you want to check the DNC or the litigant, like all of that stuff is all built in. You can decide what you want. You can see the timing to see what that adds to your timing before it's actually sent. Like, you guys have done a really good job with that. And so, that's how I've used it there. Scrubbing of data, I would say as well, like making sure that, when you have lots of leads in your system, you don't want to end up with 10 leads for the same customer.
Right.
Because it's going to be 10 salespeople calling the same person. And now with all these changes, someone says opt out. You got to make sure you have that covered, of course. You don't want to water down your lead conversion rates as well. So you got to make sure. And so this middleware just becomes a crucial part of your business. And there's some knows and unsures in here. And if you're not, really, recommend they take a look at, something like that to make sure that that part's covered, especially with the DNC stuff coming up.
Yeah. And, it's so interesting, Scott, because I was introduced to middlewares let's say about 6 or 7 years ago, I would say, is when I started really getting introduced into the nitty gritty of it. And, there's really two different, like when you're thinking about pursuing a middleware, you could consider building it yourself, right? Where, you were at Mr. Cooper NationStar, you had significant tech resources that were at your disposal to build this kind of a middleware to ingest data, pin data, et cetera. But, there's also the buy route, right? Where you can use a tool that you can purchase that directly integrates with these types of platforms. And so at Active Prospect, we have a tool called Lead Conduit. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Active Prospect's Lead Conduit tool, really what Active Prospect's Lead Conduit is it's a platform that sits in between either your landing pages, social media, if you do Facebook lead ads, and your CRM platform. And it can do many, many different things. We've got direct integrations with specific lead sources. We can do things like lead acquisition and live rejections. We do real-time bidding, and we also do suppression lists. So if you ever encounter a situation where you are buying records or generating a lot of records, I always like to make sure that when a record comes into the platform, that if there is a duplicate record, I may not want to take it if I bought that lead or generated it within the last couple of days. Like, there's no reason to ingest that second record if I've gotten it recently. Some other things you can also consider from a middleware solution is compliance. Now, with Lead Conduit, there's a full suite of compliance things that you can do available within the platform. This is actually just scratching the surface, is what you see on this slide. Number one, I highly, highly recommend it. Doesn't matter if these leads came from your own website or if you are buying them, always do a known litigator check. These known litigators, if you're not familiar with who they are, they just go online, they fill out forms en masse with the whole point of suing you under the TCPA for millions of dollars. Absolutely do this. Part of the reason why I incorporate this in a middleware solution is because I don't even want that record to hit my CRM platform. If I know that this is a known litigator, I'm going to kick it away immediately. Second thing is general fraud checks. Like, you want to make sure that that customer was not fraudulently submitted. The third one over here, which is the trusted form retain, which is basically claiming that certificate so you have the documented proof of consent. Now, this is actually a legal requirement that is around the TCPA. So you want to make sure that you claim that certificate. You can look at different attributes as well as performance marketing attributes before you route that into your CRM or your contact center. And then lastly, over here, we've got trusted form verify. Now with the new one-to-one consent requirement that's hitting in January, we do have the ability to screen records that are submitted to verify that that consumer specifically selected your organization in compliance with this upcoming regulation. But there are some other things that you can do as well within lead conduit. So we talked about like deduplication. We talked about compliance aspects. Some things that I did was, number one, I would verify that the phone number was valid. If the phone number wasn't valid, I would reject the record. I would verify that the email was valid. Email wasn't valid, I would reject the record. I did known litigator scrubs. I would also do lead scoring. So I would take the attributes of the record, I would score them. If they were a lower scoring record, I may send them to a third-party call center to pre-screen that customer and ask some additional questions, because I know they have a low propensity to close. So I want to make sure my sales agents are focusing on higher converting customers. Now, if you just tie it all together, really, the way I like to envision lead conduits is basically like a filter. So you go through these checks from top all the way to bottom. And then by the time you are finished doing your checks, your data pending, et cetera, it then gets posted to the appropriate place within your CRM platform. So if anybody here in our audience would like to get a demo of the lead conduit product, just please answer our poll off to the right with yes, and we will go ahead and get in touch with you. All right. So now we've talked about, the middleware, Scott. We talked about the use of AI. I'd really like to talk about a subject, that it's starting to come up more and more, I believe, in the compliance space, which is where, these companies that have like a distributed retail model where you've got a corporate office, you have many branches, and in some instances, those branches have the ability to do their own marketing. Sometimes they sign contracts with third-party providers, et cetera. And my experience with these is that they do actually drive a lot of entrepreneurship, but there's also compliance aspects of this that are very, very difficult to track. So I would like to hear from you, really, what are your thoughts on this? What does Shape do to tackle this? And, what are some things that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is something that, I've tried to tackle for years and years. With the current technology that was out there, nothing ever worked, because there was no way to get that information kind of bi-directional between two systems. And so as SDP joined Shape and meeting with the product teams, et cetera, I laid out this idea that, that I saw in my head, essentially, and kind of put on paper, and the team took it and ran with it. And essentially what we have built in Shape is call it the branch model, if you will, that essentially, gives a corporate team, or the company level, an instance of Shape that allows them to control the marketing as a starting point, let's just say. There's many other things that it gives them, but the ability to, create the approved marketing information or marketing collateral. And then essentially we can push that out to the other branches. So each branch would have its own instance of Shape that is separate, or kind of a waterfall of that corporate instance, so that approved content can now be pushed out to those other branches. Now, each branch then has the flexibility to control their instance, or their little branch of Shape, or their little pod of their Shape system, to do the things that they would like to do. What we find is that most people keep it the same as it is, because it's already configured. But there are some branches that, buy leads. There are some that have certain campaigns they're doing. They like to adjust the prioritization schedules a little bit different.
Yep.
And so this now gives them that ability to do it. What was always challenging is that while you could do that in other systems, it made it very challenging for the administrator of that system to set up different rules for every branch. And the requests that would come in, can we adjust this and adjust that? And the maintenance of that was so difficult that most companies said, just use whatever CRM you want. And where this is important is that mindset of just use whatever CRM you want is not going to work in the future because of these new rules that are coming out. When someone opts out and they opt out of this CRM, if it's not talking to the other CRMs that everyone else uses,
Yep.
you got a problem. And so this branch model, we've built it in a way that when they opt out of one, we can then talk to the others and the corporate instance to then opt out of the others, right? So that the corporate company is in compliance with everything. The AI insights of the report. So there's so much other stuff that is a benefit to the company. But from a compliance standpoint and from everyone's concerned, obviously, and there should be, of the compliance in the marketing that goes out, making sure that it's saying the right things, not talking about this and that. Some obviously are more, call it strict than others. It doesn't matter. Like, we can handle it all. Be as strict as you want. It doesn't matter. We can push it out and we can update and we do all the stuff, but still give each branch their little, ability to adjust those things they want.
Yeah. And, I refer to it sometimes where one of the components that you discussed, which is where, I have seen companies where the way that they currently exist is that they've got a corporate office in the branches, sometimes they're in different systems. Sometimes they're in different CRM platforms. Sometimes they're tracking leads on Google Sheets. I've definitely seen that as well. This new compliance world that we're in, especially come January, and even we talked about there's that update that's hitting in April for universal revocation of consent. There's going to have to be some hard conversations within these companies about what are the tools that we are going to allow these branches to use, and how can we appropriately, allow them to thrive and do the things that make them successful, but also keep some of these compliance aspects that are coming in January. One thing that I think, will be helpful for our audience now, not everybody's in a platform that has a branching system currently, right? So what we did here at Active Prospect was we put together a list of some things that, you can do to help maintain compliance if you are in a branching type environment. So let me just go through these ones real quick. Number one, with compliance, you should always be sending regular communications to your users and your managers. So where I think some compliance programs fall short is that, they do compliance maybe, when the employee is initially hired, but there's not continuous, touch points with that employee throughout their employment with your firm, reminding them of the things that they need to do. Number two, I actually recommend using webinars. You can actually kind of merge sales and compliance together or marry these together. So I found bringing on a top producing branch manager into a webinar, have them talk about some tips and tricks of things that they've done, but then in that webinar as well, introduce certain compliance components that are important for your branches to know and understand. We talked about continuous training. If you have the tech resources available, build an internal intranet, have it have videos and guides related to compliance. It's important that stuff is documented and available to you. Number five, this one's actually kind of interesting because this has popped up a little bit in the news. If you have multiple branches that are out there, you got your corporate office, your branches. One of the struggles that branches have is that they do not know at times who they can go buy leads from, right? Or what marketing companies can they use? What tools can they use? So one thing that can be very helpful is to provide them with a pre-approved list of vendors that they can use, as well as contacts, landing pages that they can utilize, so that you're making sure that if they're going through and making these deals with these entities, that these are already pre-vetted for these branch managers and users. This last one here, this one's actually really interesting, the secret shop. So I encourage everybody to not even if you don't do branch models, but regularly secret shop yourself. So go into your platform, or go into your landing page. Let's just say you go to your own landing page, fill out the form, click on submit, and then see what actually happens in that process. See what type of communications are being sent out, see what kind of emails and text messages. Honestly, I think you're going to be really surprised. And Scott, I know you've done this extensively. Can you talk a little bit more about number 6?
Yeah. Around the time that you and I met, when I was, trying to get these new campaigns set up, I was also losing sleep at the time for, are my loan officers going to call the right way? Does the email say the right thing? Is everything firing the right way? So I did exactly what you said there. I submitted a lead and put it in and tracked. And then as I started to velocify, excuse me, as I went around and talked to clients and saw how they'd gotten so far off track from best practices, rather than just tell them they got off track, I said, hey, let me show you how you gotten off track. And I would put a lead on their website and show them, this is your way, and here is the way you should do it. But instead of telling them, put it on like a timeline format to say, like, here's what it should look like, and here's what you're doing. It's like Days of Thunder scene where the driver goes out and drives it his way versus the pit crew guy, right? And he comes back and the tires are completely different. It's the same way. So, yeah, to Mike's point, you're gonna, use a number your salespeople aren't gonna know. Use an email address. You can go to Gmail and create a fake email address. And essentially, you want it to be a cell phone so you can see the text messages. And my strategy is this: essentially, you want to track for 10 days. Let it just sit and just watch every call you get and every email you get for 10 days. Don't do anything. Don't answer the phone. Don't do anything. On the 10th day, this is a missing piece of part of the secret shop. And again, we're talking about before an application, right? So this is just the lead contact strategy part. On the 10th day or so, what you need to do is then call back to whatever phone number you've been getting calls from and talk to the salesperson for a brief moment. Act like you're interested, give them a really juicy deal, opportunity, make it sound really good. And then act like you forgot about an appointment and you need to run, and ask them to call you back tomorrow at 2:00 p.m. And then watch what happens for another 10 days and see what that experience is like. And what you're going to find, because I've done over 1,000 of these now for the last 10 years.
Yep.
Probably close to 2,000 if I had to guess. 85% of the time, 85, we never receive another phone call when we ask for an appointment. Like, bad, right? Yeah. And so of the 15% that we do get a call back, 50% of the time, it's more than an hour late from the time that we requested it. So call it 7.5%, whatever that number is, actually happens within the first hour. And I would say that there's only been a handful where it's been, we get a call on time, we get a call 15 minutes after, we get a call 45 minutes after that. Like, that's kind of the preferred way to do it on that appointment time. And so the secret shop can be done a lot of different ways. That's the lead process. We recommend we also do it, throughout the process. Start an application on your, 1003, whatever you do there. Get to the Social Security number and bail out there, and then track. Multiple ways to do it. Put a lead in on the weekend. What happens on weekend leads? Put a lead in at 9:00 p.m. What happens there? Track your salespeople. Inspect what you expect. Do you expect your people to call the lead one time? Is that what you expect? Probably not. Or do you expect that you're going to get 6 calls with good follow-up, with a good voicemail? I've done posts before, with my favorite voicemails of the person copying into the voicemail and all of that. So, what do you expect to happen? And then expect that, and then go to work on trying to fix it.
Yeah. And what's interesting with that, Scott, too, is, some of the secret shots that I've done it's been very eye-opening. Sometimes, I can count numerous times where I submitted leads and I got nothing. No response whatsoever, no text message, which is crazy. An owned and operated site, your own website that went into the CRM platform. And sometimes you start uncovering things where you're like, oh, this worked. I configured this from the beginning, but then this has never been revisited. Somebody made a change. Your contact strategy is not working. But also, what was interesting to me, and you mentioned this a little bit on your voicemails, but you should see some of the emails that I've gotten. I'm not joking, size 24 font, highlighted in green, saying things that were not compliant whatsoever, and the only way you can uncover these kinds of things is there's really two. There's using platforms that can monitor what the communications are, and number two, secret shopping yourself. It's important to know what that experience is. There's performance marketing aspects of it, there's sales aspects of it, but there's also compliance aspects of it.
I did a post, by the way, a couple weeks ago with kind of my top 5 like craziest moments of secret shopping. Yeah. And one of them was that I put a lead in and I got like a couple calls from the bank. It was a bank that I did it for, but I also started receiving calls from an insurance guy, and I started getting calls from, I think it was just insurance. And essentially what we uncovered through this process was that banker was sending all of his leads to his friend.
Oh man.
Who was an insurance person. And then I through that process told, at one point told that guy to stop, do not call or whatever. It's part of the test. And guess who kept calling? The insurance guy. So obviously compliance issues galore already, but then from a do not call opt out perspective, now I've still got the insurance guy calling me. Whew, really, really bad. But again, only uncovered because of a secret shop.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and move on here to the next topic. I really think this is important. We do have the upcoming change to the FCC, and there are some components of this that I just want to make sure that everybody understands very clearly for the one-to-one consent update. So if you look here at the slide deck that I have, number one, for the one-to-one consent update, customers must provide consent to each party that they are contacting them. So in the past, or actually what's even occurring right now, consumers could go online, fill out a form, and in the disclosure language, there was a little link that said, by clicking on submit, you are providing express written consent to this list of partners. And that link actually showed every single company, and that list was like a couple hundred long, or even in some cases, tens of thousands, depending on who that provider was. The one-to-one consent update that's taking place is actually meant to combat that. Basically, what the FCC, the whole vision that the FCC had with this was that they want to make sure that if consumers are filling out forms, that they are specifically consenting to certain or specific parties that they are aware of that are going to be contacting them. The second item that we have here is there's a logically and topically related component. Now, this one is not really talked about as much, but it is actually very interesting. So really, the spirit of this component of the FCC rule is that it requires that calls and texts must be logically and topically associated with the website interaction that prompted the consent. Now, that sounds that may be confusing to some of you, but basically what it's saying is that if a consumer fills out information online on a certain website and that website has certain messaging to it related to a certain product, that they need to be called in text related to that product. So they can't be called on something that's a complete polar opposite item. The third item with the one-to-one consent update, this is also an item that's included in the telemarketing sales rule, is that there is a burden of proof for valid consent. So now, you have to, if you are purchasing leads or generating leads, you want to make sure that you are storing proof of consent on your side. So you have it within your seat, so you have a full certificate of the lead interaction, and that you actually have possession of that consent event under the TCPA. Last one here, number 4, which is text messages have also been added onto the federal DNC lists as well. Now, this next slide here where we talk about the logically and topically related. Now, when we look at this one, I'm going to dig into this a little bit deeper. So the FCC actually gave a really good example of what this is, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about something you should be thinking about even right now with this. So if you look here, it says, thus, for example, a consumer giving consent on a car loan comparison shopping website does not consent to get robotext and robocalls about loan consolidation. So that was the example that I gave earlier, which is where the consumer went to the site, talked about car loan comparisons, but now he's getting calls about loan consolidations, or maybe he gets a calls about windows, right? Under this new update that's coming in January, that is a violation. You can actually get in trouble under the TCPA if you call these customers. So what you really need to be doing is starting to look at the leads that you are generating, or if you are purchasing records from third parties, and making sure that the landing pages and the websites they are on are around the products that you are going to be selling to that customer. Some other things to think about as well is that you're acquiring these leads right now, right? So you're buying leads today from these websites. You're going to want to start flagging these records if you believe that they do not meet the logical and topical requirement. Put that flag in your CRM system. So come January, you make sure that you are not calling these customers, because if you call a customer that's not logically and topically related to the site interaction, TCPA violation. You don't want it. These things are expensive. This is just something that I wanted to call out, and that is hitting January 27th. All right, so let's go real quick into some questions here. I'm going to go ahead and pull some up. Just give me a second. And Scott, if you see any on there as well, feel free to answer any. That's there. Give me a second. So it looks like, Scott, there was a question on here real quick. This one's not necessarily compliance related. Is there a demo available that we can access to evaluate the platform? So with that, on the Active Prospect side, you could go to activeprospect.com to see a demo. Over at Shape, I believe, Scott, isn't it just setshape.com? There's a get demo button in the upper right-hand corner.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. Let's see here. So this is a question for you, Scott. How do CRM guardrails prevent TCPA violations when engaging with consumers at the branch level?
All right. So CRM guardrails prevent. So, really, I think to answer that, I would say, with the opt-outs from a text message standpoint, let's just say, as an example, to have that where they say stop or quit or what the logic there, to have that actually go into the system and literally not let you send a text, even if you try to, it's going to prevent it and not even go through. Even if it from another system tries to go in and do that, it's going to say, sorry, you can't send it. This has been opted out. So that guardrail alone will allow or won't allow that to go through. And I was thinking after I had said all this, I made it sound real like negative and all of that as I was talking about this at the branch level. Think about also through this, from a guardrail perspective, the guardrail standpoint, what you also get with guardrails is safety, right? And with the safety of a guardrail, you're going to have the support of now, call it, your administration team. For the companies that we've onboarded this model with, we have every training we've ever done. We have landing pages set up. Like, we have resources set up for these branches to be successful, so that when they come in, it's not what do I do? How do I use the system? Like, we have taken the time to really think through, how do we make each branch successful, to give them the guardrail so that we can get started with something, but also give them the support they need with webinars and trainings. And we do a weekly call with them with new features, et cetera, et cetera. So I know that wasn't the guardrail specifically in the question, but.
Well, I think with this particular question, there's things where, I know that you have like a DNC.com integration that you built, which basically allows it where if a customer is on a DNC list now, you can actually make it where you can't call them. You've got texting components where if somebody opts out at one level, that's opted out across the others. Same thing with emails. Like, there's many different categorizations when you're looking at TCPA compliance. And, with a CRM platform, there are different applications of guardrails that you need to consider. There's like time zone protect is one that's there. So like, you shouldn't be calling leads that are outside of these hours or sending automated text messages that are outside these hours. And there are tools that allow you to do that. Another question that we have here, this one I'm going to go ahead and answer. It says, how will these new regulations affect leads acquired before January 27th? This is actually I'm going to assume this is related to the one-to-one consent requirement. So basically, and we've talked about this on a couple of other webinars in the past. So right now you could potentially be purchasing records that do not provide one-to-one consent, right? So right now that's called the shared lead model. That one is actually in today's environment TCPA compliant. They do meet those laws, those requirements, but come January 27th, they do not. So when you look at this, you have to think about it. There's a couple of things that you really need to think about, which is number one, you need to know and identify within your CRMs and databases which records you do not have one-to-one consent on. And then you need to develop a marketing strategy to try to re-engage those customers. A second thing you really need to think about is like, what does this time frame look like? So January 27th is when this regulation takes place, but you're buying leads now. Like literally right now, you are buying leads that may not be compliant. So you want to start engaging with your different lead providers, the people that you buy leads from, telling them that, like, look, we need you to comply with this one-to-one consent requirement so that you could continue to call those leads after January 27th. Some other things as well that you could think about, there are plenty of like remarketing opportunities. So we have seen some customers as well where, if they've got a large database of leads and maybe those leads, a majority of them came from shared lead providers, you will remarket to those particular records to drive them to a new landing page. And that landing page, whether it's like a shape lead engine landing page or a landing page that you own, is where they are then providing one-to-one consent. So then you can call them after the January 27th date. So there's many, many different components to that to really think about for the leads that you are buying or acquiring right now. If they do not meet the one-to-one consent requirement, you need to have a plan. And if you don't have a plan, there's plenty of documentation on activeprospect.com that you can think about, or you could reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have some additional questions and concerns. All right. We're getting towards the end here, Scott. We're going to go ahead and make some quick closing announcements. So number one, just for everybody here in our audience, the FCC webinar series continues November 6th with our next episode, TCPA Success Formula, Turning Regulatory Challenges into Opportunities. If you ever want to view a historical recording, you can go to activeprospect.com/webinars. We did say if you would like to get a demo of Shape software, go to setshape.com. There's a little Get Demo button in the upper right-hand corner. And if you are interested in learning more about our products and solutions at Active Prospect, just click on Yes on the pull off to the right. Scott, I have to say, first of all, again, I've heard your story many times. I was touched by it. I even choked up a little bit in the beginning there, but I'm so glad that you were able to come on here. You provided some great insights for our audience, and I really do appreciate your time.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah. Proud to be on this long journey with you, as we talked about at dinner one night in New York City.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody, you all have a good day, and thank you for joining our webinar.